Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Atheist Experience, where bad things are happening all the time.
Yep, we're bad.
I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week's Don Baker. We are live. Today is Sunday, August 9th, 2009, from Dillahunty International Studios in beautiful downtown Burbank. Oh, wait, no, we're not in Burbank.
And we're in the love seat.
We're in Austin, Texas. We're on a love seat, Don and I, along with Muhammad and the FSM, whose eye was pointed down.
Little dangly.
And a map of the world where the intent was to start marking places where we got calls from, and I was going to put little stickies up with like an arrow pointing here, and it turned out that there were just way too many little arrows here between emails and calls. So this is a live public access television program that's not being done on public access at the moment because the public access studio is closed, although rumor is that we're actually submitting the recorded episodes. Mm-hmm. So some of these episodes that we've done guerrilla style have actually aired.
All of them.
Wow.
That's great.
Except for today, which will air eventually, because Frank kicks ass.
So we're live here, but not live there.
Yeah, so people in Austin don't get to watch us live, but people around the world do get to watch us live by connecting at ustream.tv. There's more information at atheist-experience.com, the website for the program where you can find archives and download old episodes, watch old episodes on Google Video or Blip TV. And there are people who have been asking about BitTorrenting the programs. You should be able to download it from either of those sources, and you can set up a torrent on your own, since we're talking about file share stuff. There are some other changes coming, ways that we're going to be using to communicate with people. I mean, we already have our website and the Atheist Experience blog, which it's not officially associated with ACA, but it involves most of the people on the Atheist Experience. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning at around 11:30. We had that meeting this morning.
We did.
And immediately following that meeting, because this is the second Sunday, we had our board meeting where we talked a little bit about the Bat Cruise, which I'm going to make sure to mention here just as soon as the other announcements are done. We have those meetings every Sunday except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Last month's lecture was Christine Comer, and from what I've heard, it was great. I've got a DVD of it I'm going to watch. I couldn't actually make it that day. We have a lecturer lined up for September, but for the life of me, I don't know who.
I think it's somebody from Texas Freedom Network.
It is. It is somebody from Texas Freedom Network. I remember Don sending that email out, and we'll update probably next week as well. In addition to this program, which you can listen to live, watch live, download, however you want to do it, podcast, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information about the show. We were live last Saturday, not yesterday, and we'll be live again next Saturday and every 2 weeks until the studio change. When we get back in the studio, I'm going to shift the nonprofit schedule a week so that my week off from the TV show coincides with my week off. Not that you guys care about.
We'll have a lot of chaos
time
between now and then, so we'll see what happens.
There's lots of rumors about good things going on in the studio, and we'll get more information about that as we get closer. There's going to be a training process, and then the studios will reopen, and hopefully, we'll be there high def, streaming and screaming. The Bat Cruise is an event that the ACA sponsors every year, in addition to our weekly happy hour, which was at the Dog and Duck, and now it's happening at the Flying Saucer. Is that right, John? Are we moving it there officially?
We haven't decided.
They still haven't decided. The slackers who like to drink on Thursdays can only decide that they like to drink on Thursdays.
We're leaning that way.
Yeah.
They are leaning towards moving to the Flying Saucer regularly. They've been there the last couple weeks.
But the Bat Cruise is especially important for folks who are out of town, right? Because we want to encourage folks to come down and visit us that weekend.
Definitely. And here's a little bit of what's going on. Austin has the largest metropolitan bat population in the world. And just millions of bats.
And they all live under pretty much one bridge.
Yeah, although there is
a
one and a half. There's another section that's north of us as well. But every year we go out and we rent a boat down on Town Lake, and we can take about 50 people or so. So if you're interested in coming, you're going to want to visit the website and get your seat reserved. there's more information at the website about how to register for the event, how to pay for the event, as well as information about what's going on before and after the event. I'll give you the quick rundown. Since we haven't been going to Threadgills because we're way up north for while we're doing shows for my place, we're going to meet at Threadgills. The back cruise is Saturday, September 26th. We're going to meet at Threadgills at 5 o'clock.
For a little drink.
For a little drink. There's a parking garage behind there, One Texas Center, where you can park free of charge for the entire duration of the time that we're out on the boat. We'll meet at Threadgills at 5 o'clock. You can show up a couple minutes late if you need to at the bar. And at 5:30, we are going to leave as a group and walk from Threadgills down to the boat dock, which
About 2 blocks.
Yeah, it's a block and a half, 2 blocks, something like that. And then the boat will leave right at 6 o'clock. We'll go up the river a little ways, party. You can bring drinks, no glass containers, food and snacks and stuff. I've brought a guitar in the past. You can just, I don't know, bring yourself, bring a camera. We head out for a little
Bring your
while,
friends.
and then just at dusk, the bats start coming out in droves, flying overhead, and you get some good pictures. It's a
And
good
from
chance
the
to
boat,
talk.
that's the perfect position to be them because you got the sunset in the back, and
Right.
they're silhouetting the bats are in silhouette, and you can see them quite well, and it's pretty wonderful thing.
And much like, Gilligan, it's a 2-hour tour.
2 hour.
It's done at around 8 o'clock. We'll come in. We'll head back to Threadgills, at which time people can grab something to eat, sit around and visit, or head out in your cars. And then some of us will be going to Esther's Follies on 6th Street after the event's over. It's entirely optional. I would encourage people who would like to go to the Esther's Folly event to visit the website and to go to Esther's Follies website, call the number, and reserve your seat ahead of time because this show sells out. They do 2 shows a night,
It's
Wednesday,
a comedy
Friday, and Saturday.
comedy thing. It's a lot of fun.
It's a comedy variety, hippie, liberal, goofball,
A little
bonanza.
magic sometimes, right?
Oh, they're every time.
Yeah.
And Ray is a joy to watch. So if you want to do that, you can go down and register there. There's more information at the website. It's not up now, is it?
No.
But it will be up soon because we will be chaining Don to a desk until
he
it's
gets it
actually
up there, right? It's all my fault.
So, hello everybody. Welcome, Don. Don is going to talk to us about some things. We are taking calls, or actually making calls, as we have been doing since we moved into Dillahunty International Studios. To get a hold of the show, you need to download and install Skype. That's SKYPE. You can go to skype.com for more information. You'll need to set up an account. It's basically a voice over IP service that lets you do teleconferencing or video conferencing if you want. You'll need to add to your contacts list Atheist TV, all one word, no spaces, and we will get you added along with the hundreds of other people that have already been added. It seems like every Sunday when I start this thing up, there's 30, 50, 60 requests.
Uh-oh.
And so do not call.
Don't let the fame go to your head.
Do not call Atheist TV. All you need to do is send a text message to that Skype account with your name, your location, and what you want to talk about on the day of the show. And our call screener, who today is John, everybody be nice to John or he won't get on the show. John will queue you up and we'll make outgoing calls. If you've never used Skype before, please make a test call a friend, make sure your audio stuff is working.
Yeah, we don't have enough airtime.
Otherwise, we're just going to have to hang up. And I'm already wasting a whole bunch of airtime talking about this stuff.
Okay.
So what have you got for us? Oh,
Well-
the T-shirt first.
Oh yeah.
We wanted to thank Jim, a fan of the show, who made these Atheist Experience mental health spa T-shirts and sent them to the crew. I would have been wearing it, but
And what does SPA stand for?
Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle,
Okay.
which I enjoy.
It's very, very cute. Cute pun.
Cool.
Okay, well today I'm continuing my greatest hits from the Bible series, and if you haven't listened in before, that's fine because this is a standalone thing. But the gist of it is that we're talking about the Bible's impact, especially on the real world, right? Because there's
Do
a
I
whole
need
bunch
to
of
get a Bible?
you might. It wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
We're not going to do a huge amount of Bible quotes today.
I'm going to be rude and just walk off the screen.
Matt's going to walk off. Okay, so we're talking about the impact of the Bible, what effect it's had on the world, and unfortunately a lot of the effect is negative, and so we want to sort of make people aware of that. This is kind of basic Bible literacy. I'm not a Bible expert, but I think what I'm going to say today is pretty basic stuff. So in the past, on May 24th, and on June 28th, I did shows on Genesis. Now, I'm not going to hit every book of the Bible. What I'm going to do is shift gears a little bit and to talk about some themes that appear in the Bible. And probably the biggest theme, maybe the second biggest theme, the biggest theme is killing. Killing happens all throughout the Bible. It's just kind of the main way that God interacts with humans in the Bible is killing them.
It seems to be the only way he knows to correct mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, banishment didn't work. That was the first thing he tried, and then after that, it was, well, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him.
Script their language or whatever. There's all sorts of things. So we're getting out of Genesis, there's so much killing. There's this really wonderful guide on the Freedom from Religion Foundation's website called the ABCs of the Bible, and it's very cute. What they've done is they've said they've sort of categorized different things according to the letters of the alphabet. And I'm going to just read a few of the ones that talk about killing. So under A, we have an angel killing 185,000 warriors in one night. That's in 2 Kings. I'm not going to tell you where all these verses are. You can go look them up. Under A, we have asking your neighbors to help you stone a stubborn child to death, a son. Under B, we have bears devouring 42 children. And beating slaves to death in stages, boiling and eating your son, breaking and chopping up human bones and seasoning human flesh, filleting flesh off bones. Wonderful stuff in the Bible. Book of love.
It's a good book. Let your kids have it.
It's a good book. Yeah, burning women accused of witchcraft. That's something I want to hit more today. And accused of wizardry. So by the time you get to the K's, it's all killing. So there's a lot of killing. I hope that's clear, and most of it is either sanctioned by God or that sort of thing. I think another thing that should be said is, there's this commandment in the Bible in Exodus 20 of thou shalt not kill, but that was directed at the Jews, right? That was directed at the Israelites who were, it's like, I am the Lord thy God who brought thee out of persecution, out of Egypt, and these sort of things. So it was directed at those, and a lot of Christians say, oh, that Old Testament stuff, that doesn't apply, right? So there isn't much in the way of prohibitions of killing in the rest of the Bible, and a lot of atheists have a different take on the Bible. I think Jeff D. calls it the big book of multiple choice, right? Because you can kind of choose whatever you want out of it, and I call it the Rorschach test for the morally challenged. That whatever you want to find in there, you're happy to find. So there's so much killing. How do you focus on the important ones? Well, I've chosen three. I've chosen three vignettes or three things of the Bible. One is killing witches. There's a prohibition against for killing. There is what is it? Not fun. An encouragement to kill witches. There's Bible verses justifying the persecution of Jews that have been used that way, and very successfully, I might add. And then the third thing I want to focus on is the end times and rapture insanity, where true believers are allegedly going to be swept up to heaven, where they get to watch everybody else die in agony. So isn't that great? Yeah. Okay. So and those three things alone, I think kind of capture a lot of the sort of spirit of this sort of thing. Well, I want to talk about witches first. And this is in the Old Testament. This is Exodus 20:18. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live.
22:18. Right?
22:18. Thank you.
Yeah.
Exodus 22:20. He that sacrifices unto any god, save unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. And then a little later on in Leviticus, we have a man or woman that has a familiar spirit or that is a wizard shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones. their blood shall be upon them. There's a little bit more in Deuteronomy. So this is the Old Testament law, and this is really sort of the Jewish law, really. The Christians recognize the 10 Commandments, but the Jews recognize, 617 commandments? 13?
613.
613 commandments.
Give or take.
Right. So, unfortunately, God wasn't quite bright enough to say, oh, well, there aren't any real witches. So everybody's been running around trying to figure out, who's a witch, and accusing various people of witches and being witches, and deciding whether to kill them or not. And so we have, a long history, I think, of witch hunts. This is the real witch hunts, which are kind of a moral panic, right? Jen talked about that on one of her shows, Jen Peoples, about moral panics, where people decide, there's some problem here, there's a cause of some illness or whatever, and it must be witches. So let's go kill some people who we think are witches. And to hell with any evidence that there are witches or whether witches exist or any of that all gets glossed over, and they go out for blood and they go kill somebody.
They weren't even smart enough to figure out that if she weighs the same as a duck... Oh, never mind.
Yeah, there's this kind of funny thing. It was Life of Brian, was it? Or one of the Monty Python
It
things?
was Holy Grail.
Holy Grail, okay, yeah. It turns out that this putting witches in water thing actually predates the Bible. It's from the Hammurabi, the Code of Hammurabi. It says, to divine between witches and non-witches, you put the person who is accused of being a witch and the accuser in the water, and there's some sort of test that has to do with the water. So that's where that all comes from.
And there are other tests where, like, you weight them down with stones, and if they don't drown, then they're a witch and you need to kill them.
Okay. So the net effect of this is,
I guess you pay their family or something.
We've had a lot of people killed. A lot of people, even in present time, not necessarily in modern Christian countries, but a lot of people in Africa are accused of being witches, and that's
as
usually
recently as this year.
And that's usually a scam where people are trying to get the property of the people that they are accusing of being a witch, so that it's basically a transparent scam.
Although the last one I heard about was a bunch of men claiming that these girls were witches because they had made them impotent.
Yeah, or made their penises disappear or something.
My penis shriveled up. And we're so overly concerned with that.
Yeah, and if people weren't being harmed by this, it would just be ridiculous, right? It'd be laughable. But unfortunately, a lot of people are being killed. So according to Wikipedia, though, on the witch hunt article, let's see. In the classical period of witch hunts in Europe falls in the early modern period of about 1480 to 1700, spanning the upheavals of the Reformation and the 30 Years' Wars, resulting in an estimate of 40,000 to 100,000 executions for witchcraft. And this is really pretty sad because, all it really sort of took was for somebody to say, oh, I saw their spirit jump out or whatever.
I saw her dancing naked in the woods.
Right.
Why would you tell anybody that?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And
watch.
this is disproportionately directed at women, which is I think ultimately a way to control women and keep women terrified. And it's just really a pretty sad episode. And we even had a bunch of that in our own country with the Salem witch trials where over 150 people were accused and imprisoned. Let's see, 14 women and 5 men were hanged for witchcraft. And, the only silver lining is that they decided after this that it was such an embarrassment that they would ban all sort of spectral evidence, is what they called, from any trial henceforth. And that's the only silver lining from this. So when I think of the Christian founding, I think of the Salem witch trials, because they came over and they set up this really sort of theocracy in the New World before the real founding of the country, and they did all these sorts of crazy things, and it is a black mark on America, I think. We don't get to say, oh, those idiots in the old world, they were doing all these crazy things, but we had some of that here, unfortunately. So I guess I'll move on to the next little vignette. And this is
who we killing now?
Who we killing now? Well, this is let's fast forward to the New Testament, right? So now we're talking about,
which is what every Christian wishes they could do.
Right.
Let me just skip over that old one.
Skip over that old one. That old one has a lot
Except
of
for the Ten
embarrassments.
Commandments. We're going to keep that one.
Yeah.
In the beginning, God created
But
the
we're
heaven
just
and the
gonna
world.
keep it as
Thou
a little
shalt not
outline of
kill. Jesus died for me. That's all you know.
That's right. Okay, so now we're talking about the Gospels, and we have Jesus being punished, and there's a very dramatic episode where Jesus is up on trial, right, with Pontius Pilate, and he's sort of being accused of some sort of crime. We're not quite sure what the crime is, and he says, this is Matthew 27:22 through 25. Pilate saith unto him, What shall I do then with Jesus, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, Let him be crucified. And the governor said, Why? What evil hath he done? But they cried out more and more, saying, Let him be crucified. And then when Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but rather than a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. Ye see to it. And then they answered all the people and said, His blood be on us and on our children. And that's, you had a comment about that Bible verse, right? That you told me at breakfast?
Well, it's one of many. I don't know. I'm almost at the end of the book, but I think I can probably go ahead and recommend it. Bart Ehrman's newest book, Jesus Interrupted. A lot of people are familiar with misquoting Jesus, and some of you, to a lesser extent, might be familiar with his book, which is way better than misquoting Jesus, which is Lost Christianities. But in Jesus Interrupted, he talks about the hidden contradictions in the Bible, and from a historical critical perspective of looking at the Bible, you can see how both the gospel narrative changed as these. I mean, because it's not like these are eyewitness accounts that were written, right after the events.
These are all derivative works, right? One was based on an earlier one, which was based on a later
Mark
one.
was written, and then Matthew and Luke borrowed some from Mark, and potentially from some other stuff as well. And then John was written later, and he's not even considered one of the synoptic gospels because he goes on a different bent. But Paul's stuff was written before this and includes slightly different theological messages. And this, what Ehrman talks about toward the end of that book, is this great irony that you had Jesus, who was a Jew, who, while he taught, from what we can understand, he would have taught Judaism with a twist. His followers, over the few centuries immediately following the events that they're talking about, modified their religious beliefs to the point where they're unrecognizable. There's nothing really Jewish left within Christianity.
It was really a schism.
And while Jews were occasionally laughed at or regarded as odd for their quirky rituals and accused of being lazy for not working one of the days of the week, it wasn't until Christianity really took hold, until Constantine makes it the official religion, and that you have persecution, wholesale persecution of Jews.
Yeah, it was pretty big at that point.
And it was
once Christianity kind of got out of got dried behind the ears, it started going after the Jews.
Yeah, and it was the books in the New Testament represent the different thinking at different times, and especially some of the books that we've lost, which are even more anti-Jewish than.
Well, it's my understanding that the anti-Jewish sentiment builds, right? That the earlier ones are sort of, there's this thing, but then as the later Gospels come along, they actually build on it and blame more and more, right?
Yeah, and then you've got guys like, Marcion, who are branded a heretic, who actually would have been a fairly good representative of at least what some Christians held. He didn't necessarily have the orthodox right view on specific issues about Jesus and God, but he did have a very anti-Jewish bent that would have fit right in with what was going on, in those 350 to last week with regard to Christian persecution of Jews. I mean, there was no persecution of Jews until this one band of Jews went out and modified their religion and hung out with a bunch of Gentiles and said, hey, you mentioned today, it sounds kind of like a sibling rivalry. And it kind of is. Don and I are brothers, but Don killed our dad. So I'm after him now. We no longer have the same beliefs. He's an evil, vile person who, killed our father.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of ironies here, right? The story, as a dramatic thing is, you're supposed to meant to empathize with this injustice, right? And that's really sort of, I think, the point of the story, right? But it ends up being twisted around so that it becomes a reason to create an injustice against people who weren't even there, weren't even involved. And you have this funky category error where, maybe, the story's fiction as far as I'm concerned, right? Or heavily embellished, one or the other. And so you have this situation where, maybe there were some people calling for this person to be killed, right? Maybe there were 5 or 6 or whatever. But then you're gonna use this as a justification to go persecute a whole race of people who had nothing to do with this, right? And this whole event was never chronicled anywhere outside the Bible. So it became this goofy, let's go kill Jews. Well, and another irony is if you believe that Jesus was brought here to die for our sins, right, by God, right, as some sort of loophole bullshit to get out of original sin, right? Then isn't it a good thing that he's dead? Isn't it great? Shouldn't we be celebrating the fact that he got killed? Isn't that wonderful? And no, it's an excuse. He's not only a free pass to sin, but he's also a reason to go kill people. So he's like doing double duty. Maybe that's why everybody loves Jesus so much. I don't know.
Yeah, and we brought up the same point before: is why isn't Judas the hero of Christianity?
Yeah,
for most Orthodox Christians, it is the death and the death is the payment for sins, and the resurrection exonerates you, and that's the core tenet upon which you base your faith. And if that was essential and needed to happen, and oh by the way, was part of God's plan, because everything's part of God's plan, then boy, Judas should be the hero, and so should the Jews. And yet, it's really kind of passive aggressive, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's even more ironic now because you've got Jews who didn't really know persecution until their Christian brethren began it, and this goes on and on and on. And now they're in a position where they have to be kind of buddy-buddy because people have used these Judeo-Christian labels, and we're a Judeo-Christian country.
Yeah, well, let me
that.
explain where that came from. I mean, Christianity has systematically persecuted Jews, and that's both Catholicism and Protestantism, and I think it all kind of culminated into the Holocaust, right? Where Hitler says, "Oh well, this is the final solution. This is to the problem of the Jews and all that in Mein Kampf." And we have the fact that we have Martin Luther's writings, very heavy anti-Semitic writings, being adopted into Hitler's thinking, and we have the Lutherans who were basically a branch of Protestantism. They're in Germany along with the Catholics doing this thing, right? So it's just an ecumenical Christian thing to go kill all these Jews, and it was just such an awful thing that the whole world just was aghast, right? And it was such an embarrassment to Germany, and they will gladly admit that it was an embarrassment and a mistake. So now we have all this spin doctoring after the fact, right? We have the Jews are our little buddies. It's a Judeo-Christian nation and all this stuff, and it really sort of belies this 1900-year history of absolute persecution of the Jews.
Well, and there are also there's a contingent of Christians who are wanting to cozy up to the Jews because they want to bring along the end times, and they think that this is essential. So really, they're like, it'd be like Judas's
really
brother prodding him along to do this because he knows it's nuts. And right now there's some Christian who's watching a recorded clip of this because I doubt you're watching this live. Who's like, oh no, they're just throwing everybody in one bucket and they just don't get it. No, we're not. The Jews weren't persecuted wholesale until Christianity.
Well, there was the
It's not- you're not-
Barkovka rebellion in the 700 that was put
Which-
down. This is the first destruction of the temple in 70, and that was basically the Romans doing that. But beyond that, the Romans
but
were
that's
fading it.
that's Christianity.
No, this is 70. This is before
78
before
70 AD.
Constantine.
But that's not okay. That's not the persecution thing that I'm talking about. In any
Right.
case, to get to the point
But
of
99.99% of it was Christians, right? Of the later stuff.
yeah,
That's all.
But-
So I agree with you.
but the point
Okay.
is that for the Christian who's sitting there, oh, blah 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 blah. No, we're not lumping everybody in one bucket. You may not be anti-Semitic. You may not be a lot of things. You may not be wanting to stone your child. You may not be wanting to burn witches. All we're talking
this
about
is the history of your religion.
What's in your Bible, what's in your religion, and it's not my job to apologize for it. It's your job to explain to everybody how it is that you can, first of all, think this is true without supplying evidence to support it, but second, call it moral and good and right while you're selectively picking and choosing what you want. And what I'm gonna, like I said before, in the beginning, God, thou shalt not kill, Jesus died for our sins. That is by and large what most Christians know. That's all. I ran into a guy. We spoke at dinner not too long ago, and he was like, "Oh, you're an atheist?" Well, I'm a Lutheran. Okay. But I don't believe in any of that Old Testament stuff, and this thing about Genesis and the garden is silly and the flood is silly, and I'm not even really that sure about the God thing, but I just kind of think that there was this guy Jesus who said,
Jesus
"Love
is
your
candy coating on this
neighbor."
plutonium god,
who said things like, love one another and be nice, and that's what I believe, and so I'm a Christian and a Lutheran. And sometimes I get in arguments with people at the church because they say I'm not. Okay. Hey, guess what? I'm African American. I am. Look,
That's right.
I can use whatever label I want. I'm African American. I'll even unzip my fly and prove it.
Oh, we're all from Africa, right? We're all African American.
The point is, you don't get. I mean, you're free. You are free to label yourself however you choose. You can say you're a Christian, but that label has a meaning to everybody else. And if your meaning is unique,
and a hell of a lot of bad.
it is useless. You have conveyed no information. You have told people nothing. As a matter of fact, you have misinformed people because you have adopted a label, applied it to yourself, and used it in a way that is not consistent with anybody's understanding of that label.
But that's very common. I've been in a debate on our website with somebody who's just convinced that Catholics aren't Christian. Right, and
As is Ray Comfort and
yeah,
a bunch
there's
of
a
others.
lot of people, and it's just it's
And by
really,
their doctrine, they aren't.
yeah. So it's just whatever label you want to use, and we talk to enough people on the air, especially during the regular part of the year where we talk to a lot of Christians, and they all have my version of the religion is the right one, and everybody else is going to hell. We get a lot of that, and a lot of Christians don't agree on the thing, and from our standpoint, it looks crazy, right? It looks like it's like you can't even get your story straight. What does this mean? So we've devolved into asking, what do you believe and why? Because we can't.
Because otherwise, I end up making an assumption, and then somebody says, "Oh, well, that's not what I believe." Okay.
Okay. So the third vignette. Let me move on, and you kind of gave me a segue, right? Is that we want to keep those Jews around because it sure does help with that end times thing. And
You noticed that, huh?
Thanks. Well, I don't want to delve into quotes too much on this one, but there is this book of the Bible called the Apocalypse of John, or the Book of Revelation, which is the last book in the New Testament, and it was pretty much written by a crazy person, and they were describing a vision, and this book seems to attract all the crazy people in Christianity.
Yeah.
It seems to be their main book, and it's
Along with 65 other books.
yeah.
But this one more
This
so.
this one just seems to bring out the real nutcases more than the others, I think. And it's this idea that Jesus is going to come back, and here's what's going to happen, and here's how you know this thing is going to happen, and on and on and on, and it plays into this whole idea of prophecy, and oh, we're living in the end times, and oh, that earthquake was a foretelling of Jesus' return, and you see this psychosis where there's these characters are actually. Are they characters or places? Gog and Magog in the Old Testament or in the New Testament.
Both. Depending. There's some debate about whether or not Magog means the place of Gog, and whether or not you're talking about an individual in a place, or two individuals, or two places.
Well, if
two
you
generic terms, or two something else that we can spin in such a way that we can make it say what we want it to say in order to take the actions we want to take.
That's right. And so this has turned into a big business, because you can project, you can say we're living in the end times, you can say this is this, and it's really sort of how you want to spin things, how you want to interpret things. In some of the earlier Christian, I'm talking about 1970s or so, rapture literature, you see Gog and Magog being Russia, because there was this big Cold War thing playing out, and now Gog and Magog is in the Middle East, because that's where all the action is, and it's just very psychotic. It's really just sort of trying to interpret the ravings of this madman John of Patmos in terms of present day things, and trying to make money at it, because a lot of people are buying. A lot of people want to be the ones who are saved, right? Because Jesus is supposed to be coming back, of course, and then we can do a whole show on that whole thing, because it's just nonsense. If you read in the Bible, everybody who is saying Jesus is coming back is going to be within that lifetime of the speaker or the disciples. And anyway, but we won't go there. But when Jesus comes back, there's going to be all this tribulation and all this gnashing of teeth and all this fire and brimstone, and all the good people get swept up to heaven, and everybody else gets to be, killed one way or the other, lake of fire, and tortured, and it's just this sort of big orgasm of pain. And I've called this thing, snuff porn for Christians, and that's really sort of how it's marketed, right? It's let's get off on everybody else dying, because we're going to be saved, and I think that this is probably one of the sickest parts of Christianity, if I had to name one, is this whole.
It's like looking at a car wreck and thinking, "Boy, I'm glad that's not me,"
or sitting there. That's what I. That's what I think about it. It's really awful. Anyway, that's all I have for today, unless you want to talk about some of the rapture stuff some more.
Nah.
No.
We got callers waiting. We've had callers waiting since last week.
Okay. Well, let's go to callers.
But so while John's setting up callers, go ahead. You had.
One more sentence. Next time, I'm going to talk about torture. Just we got killing this time, and we'll talk about torture next time, and how that gets justified.
There's a movie you should watch.
Yeah. What is it?
Crap, it's not coming to mind. Closet Land.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I have it. You can borrow it.
Okay. You seem to have all the videos. When do you have time to watch all these videos?
I'm sure there's some that I haven't watched.
Okay.
Who do we got? Anders in Norway. Yeah,
Yay.
we had Anders
Hello.
last week. How are you doing, Anders?
I'm doing great. I'm listening to you guys. I'm doing great now.
Welcome.
Yeah. Really fast. I'm really liking the show, and I think you guys should pitch this to a major network to get the word out there.
We get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
It turns out you have to provide a lot of money to make that happen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If only it happened for free, we'd be there.
Well, we have the internet now, so we can do things for free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first question is, will the rules of the universe, quote unquote, kill God in the future? Everything in the universe has followed some rules, and they kind of are the product of these rules.
Yeah.
And the rules said first adapt, then they said find clothes, then they said go to the moon. Then each step will kill God in the future. Do you think?
No.
Okay. No. The political God.
You're talking about the God of the gaps, right?
Well, it very much depends on how you define God, but in the broad sense, there's always going to be somebody who defines God in a way that God is immune from these things.
Right. A lot of folks say that God makes up the rules, right?
Yes. That
puts
as
God outside of the rules, right?
As the transcendent author of these rules, he's not subject to these rules. And so no matter what we learn and discover about the universe that would limit, there will always be some people who accept the idea of this God. Now, what I do think is that as we learn more about the nature of reality, the nature of the universe that we live in, the belief in God will it's going to
get more
vary,
logic.
but it'll eventually decrease to where I think P.Z. Myers said that it would be something along the lines of knitting, some kind of a hobby, or it would be more embarrassing to say that this is something you believe. I'd like to see it get to the point where religious people, superstitious people, and anybody who is adamant in their support of non-scientific ideas of bad science, junk science, pseudoscience, superstition, and religious. I'd like to see it get to the point where they represent such an extreme minority that they have no relevance or power on the political.
Well, and we're getting there, I think, very slowly, right? We're having it used to be that religion was a very private thing, right? And it wasn't a topic of polite conversation, right? But the religious right in the United States, I think, has gone a long way towards changing that and making it a very public thing. They wanted to shove their religion down everybody's throats, and so it has become a public thing. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we, poke at it and say, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, this is stupid, this has killed people, and so on. Hopefully, we'll make a little impact, and we'll get to this point where people will say, oh, well, of course that's wrong, of course it's ridiculous. Maybe that's my hope. That's what motivates me.
Yeah. Will technology in the future maybe make it harder to teach religion to kids? Because the technology is knocking on the human nature, and human nature wants to go to the moon and figure out stuff in a way.
Yeah, you'd hope so. You'd hope so.
Yeah.
But we get a lot of people that are anti-technology, and they're writing us on their computer, and they're interacting with us via the TV, and it's like they just don't even get the fact that these technologies were brought to you by science and reason, which are the very things we're advocating, and they're advocating against them, and yet they're using them. So they just sort of miss the point of all this technology around them. They don't see it as having anything to do with anything.
There's a saying that as soon as you make something idiot-proof, somebody will build a better idiot, and I think that applies in this case to no matter how well we understand the universe or how advanced technology gets, to where any reasonable thinking person would think that this negates or eliminates the need for superstition or religion. No matter how good we get at that, somebody is always going to be better. It's just we need to get to the point where that is the minority, and I think it's actually inevitable. However, I'll add the caveat that it is inevitable, provided that somebody doesn't actually present evidence for their claim. I don't want to sit here and say that there is no God, that's absolutely impossible, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just that this is an unbelievable claim, and nobody seems to be able to support it by anything. If in the future, if God shows up in my living room, or if there is a God and it reveals itself to everybody, or if we find evidence that leads us to a conclusion that there is this type of thing, well, okay, then it'll change. I just don't see that that's likely. I mean, there's a difference between whether or not something's possible and whether it's remotely probable. So
yeah.
So
I think it all depends on whether you have an optimistic or pessimistic view of humanity. Is the answer to your question?
Yeah, I think the idea of God and superstitions is going to exist in some segment of the population until heat death occurs.
Yeah, and real quick, my last question. If God created everything, how can he ever be innocent and the things he created ever be free in a way? Because everything is just rules.
Right.
I mean, if someone says, you did that, not God, well, I just used the tools of God to do that. So.
Yeah, yeah. It's this whole free will theodicy, which is ridiculous.
It depends on how you're going to... And actually, you can go ahead and... Thanks, Anders, for calling. I'll answer this one offline while we get the next person. It depends in part upon how you're going to define things because, for example, my father is not responsible for my actions.
Right.
However, if my father was able to see the future and knew everything that I was ever going to do and still raised me in such a way that I would do those things, then he is culpable.
Yeah.
It's like if I leave a gun sitting on the table and somebody else picks it up and shoots themselves, I'm probably somewhat negligent. I may have been careless. I may not. Maybe it was my house and everything was locked and they broke in and picked it up and shot themselves. If, however, I knew ahead of time that if I put this gun here because I've seen, this person walk into my house and fiddle with stuff, if I put it there knowing that he was going to pick it up and shoot somebody, then, all of a sudden I do bear more responsibility. It's about what you know and what you don't know, what you can
free
avoid.
will thing. It's like, supposedly God's given us free will. Well, I'd like to fly. I'd like to live forever. I'd like to know everything, and it's like, well, what kind of gift is this if I don't get to do these things, right?
Well, those aren't limitations on free will.
But if God is giving it to you, then no other limitation should exist, right?
No, I don't buy that.
You don't buy that. Okay. I'd like to kill God.
I'm working on it.
What a gift! What a gift of free will would that be, right?
I'm working on it. I think we have different ideas of free will, which is
we don't want to go down that path too far.
They did that last week too.
Okay.
We've got Winston in Hong Kong, who was waiting last week. How you doing, Winston?
Hello, Matt. I'm good, thanks. First, I'd like to talk about the Nintendo DS games that I sent to you a couple of weeks ago. I got an update on the delivery, and it said that it was declined because you didn't order it. And I addressed it to Matt directly at the Atheist community of Austin, so I think you might have to contact UPS themselves and ask for redelivery.
Yeah.
Get a card in the PO box.
Okay.
We got a card in the P.O. box from UPS, and I'll be happy to talk to you about this afterwards. Winston was sending us something, and it got a call. We use a P.O. box. It's not like I have a mailbox. If you're gonna try to send things to us, and I'm talking to everybody here, we have received things. I got a package today that had a book that somebody sent. The P.O. box is listed at the website, but if you're going to send something that needs to be signed for, that can never happen.
That's just a limitation that the delivery companies can't deliver to a PO box unless it's the mail service itself.
Right, and so if it doesn't come like USPS or something where you don't have to sign for it and everything, it's just not going to get here. So I'll do what I can to contact them. But let's hit the question you had for today's show.
Oh, thanks.
And thank you, by the way.
No, you're very welcome. Before I get on to Philo 71 and the problem of evil, I'd like to just touch on Matt Slick and his video on atheism and morality that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. Basically, he finishes his video by saying, who would you rather meet in a natural disaster such as Hurricane Katrina? An atheist who believes that morals are relative, or a Christian who believes that stealing is absolutely wrong? And to that I have a stock answer. Why be good when you can just be forgiven?
Yeah.
Right.
I think
why not use that Christian and then cast him aside? No,
I think once again Matt's making a gross oversimplification anyway, because just because somebody's atheist doesn't mean that they necessarily adhere to relativistic morals.
Old canard that atheists don't have morals.
And
blah, blah, blah.
and also his position is it's extremely short-sighted. It's asking who you'd rather meet and not what position you would prefer to be in. If after Katrina, my family's starving, the infrastructure is falling apart, I cannot go to a grocery store and buy the food that I would normally have bought, but I can go in and actually take the food to feed my family and perhaps voluntarily leave money in the bin or not. I think it is incredibly myopic to not see that every situation is unique, and that if you're going to try and simplify morals to some kind of cookie cutter bumper sticker, black and white, this is the case always, you're just a tool. You're an idiot.
Mm-hmm. But that's what Matt Slick does for a living, right? Is he creates these little caricatures, he makes money at it, and that's how he does it. So
Yep.
It's frustrating.
Yep. So
Because
with
it's
the,
like this age-old thing that what is the a lie goes halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes, that sort of thing. It's kind of like that because the reality is much more complex than this little bumper sticker thing that he's got, right? And so to respond to it doesn't lend itself to little soundbite TV or bumper stickers, as you say. It doesn't lend itself to that. And
yeah, not only that,
dishonest.
I'd rather not be a hypocrite. I think if you went and questioned people who looted after Katrina, I'm pretty sure they weren't all atheists. Which means the rest of them, according to Matt Slick, are hypocrites. Is he saying he'd rather let his family die?
But they're not true Christians, man.
Well, I'm curious as to whether or not Slick is implying that it is more moral for him to let his family starve than to steal something. I don't think he could. I think he can say that all day long. I don't think he could actually live up to it. And if he could, he's an immoral dick.
Yep.
Anyway, you had something on the problem of evil,
Yep.
I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I sent you a debate with Philo71. I sent 2 files because I didn't know if you could read the files in the new Microsoft Word. And basically, the position that Philos takes is the one that St. Augustine did, which is basically God judged it better to bring good out of evil than to suffer no evil to exist. And they can't even... These fundies can't even see the contradiction, the oxymoron, in the phrase "suffer no evil." One of the examples he brought forward was how there could be someone 100 times worse than Hitler, but allowing him to live would bring massive amounts of good, such as the Diary of Anne Frank. And I'll say this now: I would rather have Anne Frank alive in the world today than be inspired by her diary. And here's another soundbite. Quarks of good do not justify galaxies of suffering. And if the fundy asks what a quark is, ask him to look behind an electron.
That's cute.
The whole issue with the problem of evil that seems to escape a number of theists and apologists, they start talking about, well, you couldn't have no suffering, you couldn't have no evil. Well, first of all, we've got to be really careful when we start labeling things good, evil, whatever.
Yeah, evil is a dangerous word.
But it's if I agree, you would be. I'm fine with the fact that eventually I'm going to die, and that to me adds meaning to my life. I also can appreciate the fact that I can burn myself, or I can feel really good, and that I can contrast these things. Yes, you're going to need differing degrees of things, and unless everything is just static, you're always going to have degrees, and one can be judged better than the other by whatever subjective standard
levels
you want.
of comfort.
The problem of evil, when it's presented by free-thinking people, is not, hey, why is there good and evil? Why is there bad things happening? It's why is there seemingly unnecessary, excessive suffering that appears to serve no purpose.
Yeah, tsunamis and hurricanes and Ebola and all that.
In the presumptive role that Christianity, for example, would place God and God's plan and the meaning and purpose and value of life, etc., That role is one that seems to be in conflict, or it seems unnecessary to have the suffering that we see, to the extent we see it. I'm not a big fan of the problem of evil argument. I think it opens way too many little doors and windows for people to, well, yeah, but what about this, and what about that, and what about this? All I care about, tell me what you believe and why, and either you have a good reason or you don't. Do you have evidence for it? Saying, well, if there's a God, why is there suffering? Even saying it in the proper way.
Hats off to Epicurus for thinking of that. Long before Jesus was even thought of, right? So it's an old conundrum, and it's a goodie.
You mean Euthyphro?
No, it was.
Yeah, Epicurus came up.
Oh,
with
Epicurus
the problem of evil.
the problem of evil. I'm thinking of
Right,
Euthyphro
yeah.
dilemma. Okay.
Anyway, so hats off to the man. He's a hero, no doubt.
But it's only a problem for certain specific ideas about God in the first place, which is, when you talk to, you haven't gained any ground. It's like if you've got an argument that demonstrates that there can't be a God that is both a square and a circle, you haven't gained any ground because you haven't covered God in any kind of broad sense. You've covered one very narrow definition. And in the case of the problem of evil, you're addressing a God that is necessarily omniscient, omnibenevolent, and omnipresent, or at least omnipotent in the sense that they could take action. Well, okay, yeah. And I realize that those are words that a lot of people use to describe their God, but you haven't, by eliminating that and showing the contradiction there, you really haven't gained a whole lot of ground.
Well, I think the reason you don't gain ground is it's an intellectual argument, and people, I think, believe religions for emotional reasons, largely. And so I see this a lot where atheists are sort of talking past the Christians or the believers because they believe because it feels good or they're going to get some reward or it's satisfying or these sorts of things. And we're hitting the intellectual nail on the head. And we're missing the thing that really matters to them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of intellectualism, what I find amusing in hindsight is when Philo says, "What are you hiding from? I see atheism as an intellectual excuse to hide behind all this pain you are describing." Well, what about Christianity and justifying suffering, which is a very defeatist attitude, and that leads to a lack of desire to relieve suffering because they can just pray for it and find meaning in other people's suffering, which I find
right, or believe that someday later it'll all be set right. All the injustices, all this pain and suffering is worthwhile because you'll go to heaven.
Well, I agree, but I wouldn't have responded anything like that. I would have responded with, "You condescending, ignorant prick. How dare you presume to dismiss something that I have, a belief that I have come to for rational reasons, which I am prepared to defend, which I am active and eagerly willing to discuss. How dare you dismiss it as me hiding behind something when you've presented nothing that comes anywhere near establishing that? How dare you argue so dishonorably and so dishonestly about something that you profess to hold dear? Either make your case or shut the fuck up.
Well,
but don't come with nonsense like that. It's like the people who call in to say, "Oh, well, what made you so mad at God?" Nothing.
Oh, yeah, I just want to strangle people.
Nothing. What made you so stupid that you think I was mad at God? Baby, want a cookie? It's the stupidest stuff. Either you can have a conversation about this or you can't. And if your claim is that I believe this, I don't really have a good reason, I can't really explain it to you, fine. Then accept the fact that you're not going to convince people about it. But if you can't do that, to come back with, "Oh, what are you, did you get your feelings hurt? Did you lose somebody? Did you ask for something in prayer and not get it? Oh my God, I want to stick my foot right up your condescending ass. You are a horrible representative of everything you profess. And yet you are so common. Maybe, are there no good representatives?
Yeah.
Could be the case.
Well, they do it out of concern for us atheists because they want to be concerned about our emotional health, right?
I really don't want you to burn in hell forever. Well, maybe you shouldn't be worshiping a prick you think's going to do that.
Yeah. And as we all know, nothing fails like prayer.
Yep.
The last point I'd like to bring up is something that is prominent on atheist.com, and they trivialize suffering and they try to glorify God by comparing God to a parent who makes their children suffer through the pain of a vaccination, so they won't get smallpox, chickenpox, rubella, and so on. And that's just ridiculous, because an all-powerful God would not need to use suffering. He could simply bypass the suffering, and create the greater good straight away.
Well, this is back to the argument from evil, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the old "he cannot give them smallpox anymore" thing, which I got from Frank Sendler, but it's on an old episode of the Nonprofits. It's a really amusing little song about all the wonderful diseases that God can inflict on children.
Jesus loves the little zygotes.
Jesus loves the little zygotes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, look that one up.
But
That's
he
a good
cannot
one.
give them smallpox anymore because we eradicated it.
Yes, a victory for science and reason. Yeah.
Science has trumped the suffering that you seem to think your God felt was necessary.
Now that's actually a great example, because there's an example where humans have made up their minds to do something and gone out and done it, and removed that suffering from the world. And hooray for us.
Well, Winston, thanks a lot for calling. We're going to move on to another caller, and I'll have I don't know who's checking the mail most often now, but I think John probably is, and I'll talk to John afterwards about getting with UPS to find out what's going on and what we need to do to get that stuff to us.
No problem. If it does get returned to the sender, I'll ask them to send it to your house address that you gave me, Matt. Thank you again for having me on the show.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. If you're, by the way, for everybody else, if you do have something that you need to send that would have to be signed for,
Be good to coordinate with us with email first.
Yeah,
that would be the best advice.
But people have sent stuff here and to my home, and that works on occasion. But there's a limit as to how much I'm going to publicize my home address.
That's not appropriate.
Although I'll give you all my phone number, 90heretic0. No kidding.
Yeah, he's got a new fancy Google phone number.
Google Voice 90heretic0.
Now you're going to start getting calls, and now you're going to have to start ignoring a bunch of calls.
That's all right.
Okay.
My phones won't ring. It'll just take a voicemail and then transcribe it and send it to my email.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Or you'll have more email.
You just jumped through a hoop and made a long distance phone call in order to send me an email. But if you want to do it, feel free.
Okay.
Who's next?
Matt in New Hampshire.
Matt in New Hampshire. How you doing?
Hey, good. How you doing?
Not bad.
Good. I actually called 3 weeks ago about the iOS schools thing.
Yeah.
Just a quick little thing. I noticed Skype does video chat too. Have you ever thought about doing any kind of that
Well,
thing?
it wouldn't be with us, because our attention is taken with the show.
Yeah, no, but I wasn't sure if there's any possibility of putting it like on the stream or something like that.
No, here's the thing. Yeah, Skype does video chat, and I did call screening last week. So some of the people who call in have their cameras up and running, so I see them while they're talking, and it's really nice. And I was thinking, if there was a way we could just pipe that video out and put it maybe in a little corner down here, maybe cover up Don's face with whoever's calling, or put you in the map. And then I realized, that's kind of unnecessary and excessive. Plus, some people may look better than others. And the chat room, I'd rather have them just make fun of me and Don than just, they already make fun of callers in there, and I won't go near that place anyway. That's a cesspool of...
Yeah.
Yes. To all you people who are watching on Ustream and chatting in there, I just said you're in a cesspool.
Okay.
It's very true, some of the things.
So we're probably not going to be putting little videos.
But on a broader sense, we get a lot of techie suggestions, and we have a limited number of resources to do techie stuff. We have some great people, but we do want to spend most of our effort on content and having a good atheism here, and maybe sacrifice some of the techie stuff a little bit.
Which is why you can get right to your question or point.
Okay.
Exactly. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I started being an atheist, or rather, I started realizing that I was an atheist around 5 or 6. In fact, I remember actually the afternoon that I realized it. I was sitting out front of my house, and I was, praying up to the sky, and I just kind of realized, wow, I sound really ridiculous doing this. There's nobody answering me at all.
Good for you. Good for you. You realize you're talking to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So on the subject of that, actually, I was wondering if you guys thought if the only thing that was true about religion was prayer, if that would be a good thing. In other words, that if there was no God that existed, no special being that answered the prayer, but if you prayed and your prayers were answered and things that happened because of the prayer, would that be a good thing, or would the selfishness and the possibility for evil prayers outweigh the good aspects of getting things done?
Well, I think that would infantilize us, right? We would forever be asking mommy for whatever.
Now we're just saying that there's nothing necessarily behind this. You're basically talking about 100% wish granting.
Yeah.
I think it would destroy the universe. I think some batshit crazy person would probably destroy the universe within the first couple seconds of getting his wishes granted.
This is fodder for science fiction, is what this is. You have to set some limits somewhere, otherwise it's crazy.
And of course, and it would make the universe completely immune to scientific investigation. Because people talk about whether or not you got free will with determinism. Guess what? Somebody pointed out in an email the opposite of determinism is indeterminism, and that's chaos. And it means that you cannot tell what's coming. And so you need the ability to discern what the results of your actions are going to be based on reliable data in order to make an informed decision and exercise choice and free will. And along those same lines, if I get really frustrated at the person in the car in front of me, and I pray that they be removed from the planet and they vanish. Well, okay, great. But
what did I do this time?
Now I'll probably have to bring them back someday when maybe if I'm feeling a little guilty. Meanwhile, you've got stuff vanishing and appearing and changing, and I wish the sky was red today, and I wish it was purple tomorrow.
Well,
it's just crazy.
I was actually more talking about things that were like physically possible, like oh, I wish my girlfriend would come back to me, or oh, I wish I got this job, or things like that.
So I wish my girlfriend would come back to me, and then she wishes that she could leave again, and then I wish my girlfriend could come back to me, and then she wishes that she could leave again.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
and it would be a buzz of some sort.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan. I mean, we talked about that. I don't want to get back on a video game bent, although because we talked about video games last week. But my friends and I have had a big discussion about some things. And right now, one of the games that we play is getting. I mean, it's super stupid easy mode where there's really no. You're getting rewarded for, showing up. I'm a big fan of getting a reward that is proportional to the effort you put into something. And so even if we could avoid the nasty, contradictory, confusing aspects of prayer as wish granting, I still think it would be a bad thing, because it would, you learn something from the process of doing something and achieving it. If I just, boy, I wished we had a TV show. I mean, if it weren't for the really I'm probably not doing very good, so it's not the best example. But if it weren't for having, or I wish I was an atheist. Okay, you are. But I never wished that. I am what I am because I wanted to be something else and found out that just wasn't justified.
You got here after some work.
Yeah.
Is the point. Yeah.
If wishes were granted, I'd be the best Christian possible, and I'd still be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a cute idea. It'd be a good basis for maybe a science fiction story.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to talk about is I sent an email a couple weeks ago about how they made RNA in a lab, and it was on Wired.
Yep.
You read that?
Very cool stuff. Yeah. They've
Yeah.
got a lot of the sort of pieces of this abiogenesis figured out. How these relatively small molecules can self-replicate. And they're really making a lot of progress on that part of the puzzle.
What do they?
Pretty exciting.
I mean, I'm only a physics major, so I don't know biology to save my life. But what else do they need besides RNA spontaneous creation?
Well, there's this question of how do you get these fairly long molecules because the really simple ones don't necessarily aid in their own replication. So there's this question of how do these things get assembled. I think they figured out some paths for how the commonly occurring parts might assemble into a whole that has some properties that start to look like life properties, where they can aid in their own replication, that sort of thing. Anyway, these have been puzzles for a while. It's always sort of looked like there may be something here. There may be a means by which life could get bootstrapped from simple stuff, but there's always this sort of doubt of, gosh, it's a big gap from here to here. How does the first cell wall come in? That's another big one that they're working on, and they're making a lot of progress there too. But only in the last 5 years have we gotten a lot of answers to some of these bigger questions, or at least a pathway for which this might have happened, and that's very good. That's very helpful in that here's a plausible way it could happen without God, right? And these gaps are getting smaller, and the need for God is disappearing.
And I won't get into the specifics of the science because I'm not remotely qualified to talk about it. But one thing strikes me interesting. I mean, you had obviously the Miller experiments and others that demonstrated that under some conditions you could get amino acids, the building blocks of life, etc. And now we've been able to generate RNA. Self-replicating molecules, etc. I think this is the thing that depresses me, because I was so enthused when I read this, and I was like, yeah, we're actually making discoveries, we're finding out stuff. This is going to be valuable, and it could potentially change the world. And then I started thinking about it. And let's say that in a lab tomorrow, or over the course of this next year, we performed something, and then over the next 3 or 4 years, it was replicated in 50 other labs. And what we did was, using the atmosphere and available materials and setting that we think applied to early Earth, we were able to generate living, self-replicating molecules. Mm-hmm. And over the course of that year, we demonstrated that these things not only self-replicated, that under the right conditions we kept it going, and they formed a cell as part of a cell, and then as multicellular organisms. And eventually we got something that crawled out of the goop a year later because we had some way of fast-forwarding and fast-tracking the evolutionary process. And then this is replicated elsewhere. For some people, that won't make a damn bit of difference.
Yeah,
because, well, you weren't there. You don't know that you've replicated. Well, no, you don't get it. We demonstrated this is possible. So your claim that life from non-life is impossible and requires a God is fundamentally false. And they'll say, no, all you've done is take the building blocks that God has already provided you and put them together in a way that you can produce something that's such and such.
For some people, no amount of evidence is going to be enough. Yeah,
that would abolish 99% of creationism. I feel, but
however, one would hope, but I don't know if that's true.
I mean, I think deists would probably survive, and probably a lot of Christianity too. Just saying, oh well, maybe it's kind of like a combination of deism and Christianity. And that
there's this thing of God,
and he
God
still guides us
the primordial soup.
Yeah, you're not going to get rid of anybody. What you're going to do is change. You're going to get rid of. You're going to eliminate more and more of the fundamentalists, but you're going to end up with people like Francis Collins, who accepts the findings of science, but like I said on a recent Nonprofits, his views are basically science plus. He accepts what we find out from science, and there was also a God who got the ball rolling, got it started, and dips in and tinkers from time to time. He doesn't ever explain how, if this God is tinkering from time to time, you could possibly do a reliable scientific experiment and know that God didn't tinker with that result. But it's science plus, and that's what you're going to see.
There's far too much attention paid to the compartmentalization of religion in his brain.
You're going to see
poor guy.
You're going to see an end to fundamentalism. Hopefully. You're going to see an end to biblical literalism.
Hopefully.
Because those people that hold to literal, fundamentalist, biblical principles will be standing as an extreme minority in opposition to everybody, including other people that they respect, other people that they love, other people in their family.
I hope you're right, Matt.
They can't vilify. They cannot
I hope you're right.
They can't vilify those people as easily. This is the same progress that we've seen constantly. Fundamentalists say wearing this particular skirt is immoral. Hello. All of a sudden, they got to sit down and shut up. They can still believe that it's immoral, but their views no longer hold sway. Their views are no longer relevant to the discussion. And it should be the case now that their views with regard to creationism and intelligent design are not relevant to the discussion, and they're still fighting to make them seem relevant. And I think that's what we're going to see an end to. We're going to reach a point, and I don't know when it's going to happen. It may not happen in my lifetime, although I hope it does, where we actually become a proper 21st century modern society that says you're entitled to have your religious beliefs and you can think God tinkered all you want, but we're talking about science and your superstitions just aren't welcome. In this room, in this bucket, in this classroom, we support claims with evidence. And until you can do that, you don't get to come to the party.
I hope that happens soon, but I'm not so sure. I mean, I'll admit that the creationists are getting a little more desperate these days, right? They've had a lot of losses, right? Like especially the Dover trial was a big one, and they're getting kind of desperate in their tactics, but they are awfully perseverant.
Well, they struggle. I think it's inevitable in much the same way that, they are trying to stick their God in every gap they can, and as the gaps get narrower, there get to be more gaps, but the gaps get narrower and there's less and less room. It's just as I think it's as inevitable as the church acknowledging that the earth is not the center of the universe. I mean, they thought that forever. They persecuted people for saying otherwise.
A little slow on that one.
And yeah, it took a long time, but eventually, you get to a point where you're flying in the face of so much evidence that it's not even worth doing anymore.
But as
I got one more quick thing, just on the same topic. But if you want to continue on, that's fine.
Okay.
It's just why do you think that I've watched a lot of videos about from like interviews with Richard Dawkins and etc. And most of them, whenever people come up and say, oh, what happened at the very beginning, he doesn't say, well, we've already gotten RNA, we've already gotten amino acids, so we're working on a couple other things. He just says, well, we don't know about that yet. Why doesn't he say that? Why doesn't a lot of people that are in the spotlight like that say?
Probably because they take any hedging on his part as an admission that they're right. Probably because for debate reasons more than science reasons, I would guess.
I think it's because he's being responsible. He knows that he's up there as a voice of science, and he knows the damage that can be done by saying, oh, well, we've done this and this. And then if we later find out that we were mistaken, that there was something wrong, that these particular experiments can't be replicated, that there was some error.
Well, they did that with the
Miller
Urey thing. The original experiment didn't have the right stuff in it.
Yeah.
Right? And the creationists have made hay with that. It's like, oh, well, this experiment was wrong, right? And they're trying to purvey to their audience that the whole idea is wrong, and that's not true, right? So it gives them a hook to misrepresent the truth. And I think that Richard Dawkins is experienced enough to try to avoid those situations where he can. I mean, he gets caught occasionally, but he's, I think, superhuman in the sense that he does try to avoid those. He does avoid those pretty well. I would certainly get tripped up about 100 times more often than he would.
Yeah.
So
well, the chat room is yelling at me to get off because apparently I'm an awful caller.
Hey,
don't listen to them.
You want to say screw? You want to say screw them and stay on for the rest of the show?
Yeah. Thanks for the call. I wish I could get to dinner with you guys, but being in New Hampshire, that's not really going to happen.
Okay, well, maybe you'll make it down to Austin someday.
See, and now I've got to let Frank know there's two things you need to bleep for later.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. He's got to bleep me too. I did it too. Wasn't thinking about it.
Alrighty.
Thanks for the call.
Guys. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Technically, I don't think we have to bleep it. It's just that we do anyway.
We do?
sometimes.
So you guys are mad at me now.
Well, I've done really good. I have
colorful comments.
I have no problem at all of using obscenities, profanity, whatever, colorful language. I just tended to avoid doing it on the show. It was easy to do when we were in the studio because you're put in a place where you recognize, okay, here's where I am, and I'm doing my job, and I'm representing the atheist community of Austin.
In your apartment.
We're in my place, sitting on the couch, wearing t-shirts, got socks. It's just
you really should put on some pants, Matt.
It's easy to do. They saw me get up there.
Okay, I can't get away with that joke. Let's take another caller. What do you think?
Yeah.
We have Craig in California.
Craig in California, another person who was hanging around last week, right?
Oh, yes, I was here last week. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
First things first, James Randi turned 81 on Friday.
All right.
That.
Okay.
And second thing second, I just thought of this great and also true scenario. It has church-state separation. It has religion being bad, doing morally bad things. It has split-up families. Well, religion, a lot of them are against prostitution for no good reasons, right? Right.
Wait. Do you mean that they have no good reason for being against prostitution, or they're against prostitution if there's no good reason for it?
They're against it for no good reason because they're a bunch of dicks. Okay, but getting on that goes in this church-state separation. They pressured the legislatures to make prostitution illegal, even though it's a victimless crime. And this is where it gets into splitting up families. Because I know some women, intimately, who had to resort to prostitution because their no good husbands, dumped them. And it was either that or their children would end up on the streets. And you know what generally happens, if these women are arrested, even though it's a victimless crime, they usually lose their children. Evidently, the state would rather have the children live on the streets, and than have them live in a house. And if they can't live on the streets, they'd rather take them away from mommy. And
However, I'm gonna interrupt. And not even apologize for it. You're right. I personally, I'm in favor of legalizing prostitution, but to imply that it is just religious people, or even mostly religious people, who are in favor of making and keeping prostitution illegal, I think it's a misrepresentation of the case. There are plenty of non-Christian, not particularly religious people who don't see it as a victimless crime, and who would take issue with your who would take issue with your statement that your friend had a choice of either I'm going to prostitute myself or my kids starve. They would say that there are always other options. I don't know necessarily if that's true. I think that this should be one of many viable options, but I don't see any reason to necessarily vilify or even call this a church-state issue. This is not a church-state separation issue. It's an issue that is one where the society is imposing its consensus morality upon everybody else, and it's going to require effort in order to make it change, in order to improve the situation. But I wouldn't hang this on religion's head.
Yeah, and my heart goes out to mothers of children who have to make sacrifices of one form or another to feed their children and keep them clothed and that sort of thing. That's certainly an admirable thing to do, and prostitution may or may not be the best way to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying that religion is blameless in this, and I'm sure there are plenty of religious regions, and I'm sure there are plenty of religious activists. I'm sure there are plenty of Christians who had this, but there are also non-Christians who had this up too, including some liberal atheist women's groups who I happen to disagree with. But I don't think this is actually a church-state separation issue. Hello.
Oh,
you still with us?
My turn.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's my okay. Well, I guess that's pretty much it. But just it seems wrong that what it seems wrong that religion is saying that prostitution is wrong when when it's voluntary, and it just seems wrong that the state's breaking up families, and it seems wrong that I don't know.
Yeah. Well, on the pro-family front, just this Planned Parenthood thing is definitely a contradiction, I think. And I actually did a show about that quite a long time ago, about the fact that, if you want to have a strong family, if you want to raise kids in a way that you're able and care for them and make them strong and successful in the world, family planning might be a very good way to do that. It might be a good way to make sure that you have kids when you want them and when you can have them and when you can take care of them. But Christians who are supposedly, pro-family want you to, every time you have sex, have a child. They are speaking out against contraceptives and these sorts of things, and getting in the way of all of this thing and vilifying Planned Parenthood, which whose main purpose is family planning, and running through the, if you want a battle, I think that's a good one, and that's a better one to fight perhaps. But
yeah, it's. Well, anyway, you can continue.
That's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Sure.
You can probably squeeze in one more call, so I'll let you go.
We'll try to do that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for calling.
Bye.
John, we got another one?
He's calling somebody to get it set up. My thing is that, even in his explanation, he's saying, well, the state breaks up family. Yeah, the state does, and it's because there are laws. Now, whether or not these laws are primarily influenced by religious people and Christians in particular,
they're really just,
or whether
these are tough questions,
or whether those people are part of a demographic that support those kind of laws, that's the issue that I'm talking about. And if we need to change laws, then let's change laws, and let's change them for good, secular reasons, regardless of how they got in place. We got like 2 minutes left. Who's on the line?
Yeah, the guy who is next in line wants to wait till next week.
The guy, that's a good idea. If you were waiting in line, actually, I'll just take up the rest of this.
Okay.
If you were waiting in line, you want to wait till next week, we can't guarantee that we keep, we tried to get people on who were waiting from last week. We can't guarantee that you're going to get through. Please have your Skype ready to go. Make sure you're checked out, and we can get you on as easily as possible. As a reminder, Bad Cruise is coming up September 26th.
Come on down.
That's a Saturday. You're welcome to come down. There'll be information. There'll be a new announcement on the website, along with links on how to register and pay, and how to register for the Esther's Follies event afterwards. We'll be meeting up at Threadgills. And after this program's over, since I didn't mention it for the whole damn show, including the announcements, we get together and go to dinner.
I'm hungry.
We're going to Pluckers up by Lakeline Mall. Russell's much better than I am because he had the address here ready to read, and I don't. I figure
it's the southeast corner of Lakeline Mall, right?
11066 Pecan Park Boulevard.
11066 Pecan Park Boulevard. It's right at the corner of Pecan Park Boulevard and 620. Just
as always,
just in that area. Hey, we only got 45 seconds left, and he's already running credits, and we're done until next week. So thank you all, everybody who called in. Thanks to people for waiting, and we'll see you again next week. And I don't know who's on.
Usually it's Tracy after me, right?
It may be Tracy.
Maybe Tracy.
Check the website. That's what it's for.
We love Tracy.
See ya.
When you came in, the air went out, and every shadow